Yeah.
Have you thought of introducing the...
Yeah, should I introduce it?
I think so, it's good. Want to get on screen?
Yeah. So today we're talking, this is hosted by the Islamic Finance Society. We're going to be talking about earning a living. We're going to be talking about earning a living from classical Arabic sources based on Dr. Adi Setia's text based on Imam Ghazali's work on transactions. Doing the talk is Shaykh Abdassamad Clarke from Ulster, formerly educated in Edinburgh in mathematics and physics. He accepted Islam at the hands of Shaykh Dr. Abdul Qadir Sufi in 1973 and later studied Arabic Tajweed and other Islamic sciences in Cairo. He has a number of sciences, translations of classical Arabic works, including the Kitab al-Attar by Imam Abu Hanifa, the complete 40 Hadith by Imam al-Nawawi, and the Compendium of Knowledge and Wisdom by Imam Ibn Rajab. He's the editor and core of the revised edition of the Sharia, the Islamic law, and he's currently the Imam and teacher in Ihsan Mosque in Norwich, and is the Dean of the Muslim Faculty of Advanced Studies.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. I wanted to give a brief preamble and then very quickly get into what we want to look at, which is this text that you mentioned, Rahab mentioned. And first of all, you mentioned the Muslim Faculty of Advanced Studies, which is where we met. So I wanted to just, in the briefest of brushstrokes, paint a small picture of it. And that is really that it's the idea is basically a fellowship of people who are concerned about knowledge. And that's the most important aspect of it, is that membership, feeling of membership of a body and people who are concerned about knowledge. Most specifically Muslims, but it doesn't have to be exclusively so. And also to people concerned about the direction the world is going, the direction of our societies. And for that purpose, we have found it absolutely necessary to wed together very traditional Islamic teachings with the best of Western academic work. We have no choice but to do that. In a prior iteration of the faculty, which was called the Norwich Conference Network, we set ourselves 4 questions, which were, where are we? Where are we as a society? How did we get here? Where do we want to go? How on earth are we going to get there? So this is really in behind the work that we're doing. And with respect to this particular lecture, or this particular study group, this has been pretty much a lifelong concern of mine and of the Norwich community, from out of which the faculty, the Muslim faculty, grew, and its founder, Shaykh Dr. Abdul Qadir Sufi. He really, in an epoch in which people of our background were getting politicized and also reacting against modernity and the industrial society by moving to the country and growing organic vegetables and things, Joe Potter put his finger on the issue of the money. So this is the key issue in the world, really the nature of the money. And so we've been exploring that insight for quite a long time. And quickly moving through the end of my sort of prelude, one of the things which was a talk by Hajj Abu Bakr Rieger, who is the Chancellor of the Muslim faculty, at the module on the question concerning economics. He returned to something which I first heard from him, which is a quotation from the jurist Carl Schmitt. And Carl Schmitt said, nihilism is the separation of order and location. It's the separation of order and location. And when I heard this from Hajj Abu Bakr, it was a guiding thought for me and for the faculty for some time. It seemed to make sense of an awful lot of different situations. And so when I was setting the title of his talk, what we wanted him to address when he came to Norwich, I suggested that it would be titled Order and Location, What Can We Do? Because I knew that he would understand the reference of these two terms, order and location. And he tackled it in a very interesting way, because he said, let's look at ISIS. Let's look at ISIS, because there's no doubt it is a kind of an order. They have set themselves the task of establishing a caliphate, Islamic governance, and they have tried to convey that impression that that's what they're doing. But of course, their more dramatic killing of various people certainly gets the headline. And they have, so there is an order, whether we agree with the order or not. There's an order there, and they have a location. They actually have a good part of Iraq and Syria, which they govern, and yet, I personally, I have no doubt that it is still nihilism. This event is a nihilistic event. So how do we explain that? Because they have joined together an order and a location. And Hajj Abu Bakr said that this is challenging for this concept of Carl Schmitt, and the only way that you can make sense of it is if you add a third term to his aphorism, and that's time. Order, location, and time. And it's a very important insight, I think, that something has to take account of the time, of the age. It has to relate to it. You can't, of course we don't like these terms like medieval, etc., but it is actually an intrinsic part of the deen of Islam that it takes account of the age. I know the tradition I know best, the Western tradition of the Maliki school, you have to look at the age, and the fatwa is given with respect to the age and with respect to the society you're in, the circumstances there. So I do that because now what we're doing today is we're actually looking at an order, at the order, at a kind of a nizam, maybe not the best word, but I don't mean a command, but an orderly matter, which is a very classical treatment of this issue that we want to look at. And this is a longish paper, 44 pages in the version I've got here. I'm quite happy to pass it on to you, by Dr. Adi Setia, who is a fellow of the Muslim faculty of Advanced Studies, and he is Associate Professor at the Center for Advanced Studies on Islam, Science and Civilization at the Malaysia Technology University, and he is also General Coordinator for the Community-Rooted Initiative Worldview of Islam Research Academy. And I've met Dr. Adi, and he is absolutely passionate about this issue of what we call mu'amalat or buyuwa, the ordinary transactions of the deen and the importance of them, particularly the marketplace. So, I'll give you an overview. This is a book, this is a paper about Imam Ghazali's book, which I will introduce. It's called Kitab Adab al-Kasb wal-Ma'ash. And he's got various headings. I'll just give you an overview of it. But as I said, I'll happily pass this PDF over to you. There's some insights from the book. He looks at detachment and engagement, which he gives the Arabic of it as ibadah and mu'amala. Livelihood and the common good. Livelihood and the common good. Ma'isha and maslaha. Then he looks at kasb, infaq, and redefining economics. Kasb, infaq, and redefining economics. He looks at ethics, economics, and politics, integrating justice, magnanimity, and concern for the religious life. Commercial exchange as a special case of giving and gifting. And the role of the mufti in community-rooted economics, the role of the mufti. Then he works through 10 excerpts from the Kitab al-Adab wal-Kasb wal-Ma'ash. We're unlikely to get through all of this, but we did approach this in our module, and we find even working through a little bit of it very rewarding. The 10 excerpts are on the virtues of working. These are the 10 abstracted parts from the Kitab al-Kasb. The virtues of working, and usurious gain, and hoarding, and counterfeit money, and justice and avoiding harm, on acting in good faith, on magnanimity in pricing, on commerce and personal integrity, on intention and the imperative of the common weal, on accountability to oneself, to others, and to Allah. So that's just an overview of this work. It's impossible for us to cover it all, but I think if we work through it, and I would like you to regard this as an exercise in us reading it together. So, stop me at any time. We don't have to get to the end. I think if we cover enough of it, you will cover the rest with a different kind of sense. I'm going to read it out and comment on the bits that might do with expansion. Al-Ghazali's important Kitab Adab al-Kasb wal-Ma'ash, the book of the proprieties of earning and living, constitutes book 3 of the quarter on the norms of daily life from his celebrated magnum opus Ihya Ulumuddin, the revivification of the sciences of religion. You all know Imam Ghazali, yes? Is that all right? Yep. A reflective reading of this work provides valuable insights into the integrative socio-axiological vision underpinning all commercial transactions and economic activities in Islam, leading to a succinct redefinition of economics as the science of earning and provisioning. Ilm al-Iktisab wal-Infaq. And thereby doing away with the current obsession with and anxiety over scarcity in chasing after wants. So, when it comes to economics, I hope to draw on your expertise in the matter. And I've understood that the very idea of scarcity is basically an axiom of economics. And Nietzsche is an unexpected ally in many things, but his criticism of Darwin was that the struggle for survival, he said, presupposes a kind of scarcity in nature, which he says is just completely wrong. says that there's a sort of abundance in nature that he says is almost mad. It's almost an insane abundance in nature. It's not the realm of scarcity at all. So your economics is a science coming out of the Cartesian initiative. And Descartes, what he was doing was he was trying to make a mathematical science. And the mathematics he was looking at was not one of numbers, but mathematics as a process whereby you state your axioms, which are, this is based on Euclid, you see. You state your axioms, which are self-evident truths that don't need proof. Then, on the basis of your axioms, you advance a hypothesis. And if you can prove the hypothesis, it becomes a theorem. Of course, I forgot the definition of terms. So it's definition of terms, axioms, hypotheses, and theorems. A group of theorems are called a theory. So this was the thing that seized Descartes and Newton and everybody after him. But one of the key things is you have to look at the axioms in any science. And my science was mathematics. I went through it in university. Torturous hypothesis after hypothesis until we covered the whole thing. And at that point, when I started, I had no doubt about mathematics. When I reached the end, I didn't believe any of it. So mathematics had its two great crises, you see. And one of the first of them was when they found out that Euclid's axioms weren't all of them as sound as they thought. And the fact is that a mathematical axiom has got a degree of rigor that no other science can hope for. So for economics, you have to look at the axioms, and this is this word scarcity as an axiomatic thought in economics. Many Muslim business people take honesty in commercial transactions for granted. This is because they imagine honesty to be a simple concept to understand and thereby to practice. Simple to understand, maybe, though even that is subject to further scrutiny, but easy to practice. As Imam Ghazali makes clear in his Kitab Adab al-Kasb wal-Ma'ash, if working and business people do not properly learn and apply the science of earning and provision, most of them will actually end up in the lying, cheating, and deception business without even realizing. I don't know if you know the saying of Umar ibn al-Khattab, a very famous one saying, "La ya'tajiru fi suqina illa man tafaqqa." And there are various versions of it. No one trades in our market except those who've learned fiqh. Of course, he didn't mean ulama. That wasn't what he meant. He meant people who knew the fiqh of trade and business and could avoid usury. Hence, it is most important for them to thoroughly understand the art of doing business and transacting in its ethical, legal, pragmatic, and most importantly, eschatological dimension. What's he saying? More than just the economics. Eschatological, we are going to lie in our graves, and we'll be raised from our graves for our reckoning. That's all really what he's saying. Al-Ghazali also embeds individual or personal good into the common good, and commercial profit into the attainment of felicity in the afterlife, thereby leading to a vision of the end of the economic life as ensuring the common well-being of all in the life of this world and their ultimate salvation in the life of the hereafter. And I think I've already had occasion to mention Adam Curtis's work twice today. And do you know his work? Have you met him? He's very, very important, actually. And funnily enough, he started off as an entertainer in the BBC, working I don't remember his name now. But he's made a series of documentaries which are really significant, very important. And what he's been saying most recently is that basically the political class and the media class no longer understand the world. They don't understand the world. And because they don't understand the world, they tell simplified stories of good against evil, basically. Everything comes down to good against evil, but in ways that are just not acceptable to adult human beings. And I think single-handedly he's almost trying to make accessible on a popular level a more sophisticated insight into these things. And he has, he looks, for example, at Margaret Thatcher and her coming to power, and one of the people that influenced her a lot was an American thinker called Buchanan. And Buchanan hated what he called zealots. He said people that wanted to do something for the good of other people were zealots. Really, they had some other agenda. He's basically saying everybody's selfish, everybody's out for something. So let's have no idea of public service. Let's just accept that everybody's selfish and they're out for their own gain. Let's redesign everything in that way. And Margaret Thatcher was sold on this. So she redesigned government as embodying a lot of different people out just to advance their own aims. And this is a really fundamental sea change in British society. So this he's speaking against the spirit, because this didn't just happen in England. In Ronald Reagan's America, it happened at the same time. And it has spread everywhere. People think it's very sophisticated. And we were talking a bit earlier about Nash, John Nash, the second figure in game theory, whose work underpinned the Cold War strategy of the Americans, and who based it actually on his own psychosis, but he based this idea of people just regarding each other as enemies, and how, as in the game of poker, and how do I defeat my enemy? And John Nash, later in his life, he has renounced all of that and said it was his psychosis. It's not a scientific thing. It's not a reality. His book provides, in a succinct volume, an integrative ethical legal vision for the proper conduct of commercial exchange and earning a living in general. May I just say that Dr. Adi has translated, I think, something like 6 or 7 classic works on this business. Qurtubi, al-Ghazali, and they are in very pleasing English with a high academic quality to them. So you can't do better than get what his books. This is a vision which has earlier been articulated by inter alia al-Shaybani in his Kitab al-Kasb. Al-Shaybani was one of the 2 main pupils of Imam Abu Hanifa. He also studied with Imam Malik for 3 years. Al-Muhasibi in his Al-Makasib, basically earnings. Al-Muhasibi lived in the 3rd century of the Hijrah in Baghdad, contemporary with Imam Ahmad. Al-Khalal in his Al-Hath al-Tijara, a book that means urging people to get on with business and trade. Ibn Abi Dunya in his Islah al-Mal, the reform of wealth. Abu Talib al-Makki in his Qut al-Qulub. Abu Talib al-Makki was one of the Baghdadi Malikis, and his book Qut al-Qulub was the foundation upon which Imam Ghazali based his Ihya al-Ulumuddin. Yeah? In the way that the ulama did, it wasn't plagiarism. They found a good foundation and they built on it. Araghib al-Isfahani in his Dhariha, the famous lexicographer, and later by al-Dimashqi in his Al-Ishara, al-Qurtubi in his Qama al-Hirsi, and al-Wubudi in his Fadl al-Iktisab. Az-Zabidi in his Ihaf Saadat al-Muttaqin, a multi-volume commentary on Ihya, can also be said to have given due consideration to the topic. So you can pursue all of these names when you get this PDF. These and other similar classical texts constitute what may be called the kasb, ethico-juristic genre in Islamic economic thought, providing for discerning readers a clear vision and understanding of the proper relationship between detachment from worldly wealth, zuhd. Yeah? So zuhd is not asceticism. Zuhd is beautifully translated here as detachment from worldly wealth. Doesn't mean you don't have it. As Shazali said, "Oh Allah, put the dunya in my hands, but not in my heart." An engagement in the seeking of it, detachment from worldly wealth and engagement in the seeking of it, kasb, zuhd and kasb, and helping them to come away more enlightened about the meaning, function and purpose of working for a living, the imperative of wholesome sources of incomes and revenues, the moral obligation to avoid, even denounce whatever is illicit and of doubtful provenance. Here, what is illicit is haram or mahzur, or of doubtful provenance is shubha. Yeah? Shubha is something ambiguous. You're not quite sure where it stands. And the fine distinction between provisioning, infaq, and squandering, israf, and thereby contribute more effectively to the positive flourishing of themselves and their community. So it's quite a different ethos. Kasb, also iktisab or takassub, which are all synonyms, in this context simply means working for a living or earning a livelihood by means of commerce, craft production, farming, or hiring out one's services, or by any other legitimate and ethical means. It is also about what to do with what you have earned, how to spend and indeed invest your income, profit, or revenues in provisioning for your own livelihood, infaq, for the livelihoods of your dependents and for the well-being of your community, instead of squandering these incomes away in dissipative living, which is israf, or for wealth accumulation for its own sake. It is about how to organize or manage all of that effectively and prudently with strict adherence to the ethico-juristic parameters of ensuring justice and practicing magnanimity. Justice, al-adl, and magnanimity, ihsan. Inna Allaha ya'muru bil-adli wal-ihsan wa-ita'i dhil qurba, etc. As well as showing sincere concern for the religious life, ash-shafqa al-din, for the commercial enterprise must always serve the higher personal, social, and eschatological goals of the faith. In short, the merchant, and the merchant here would include all participants in the market. All participants in the market. In short, the merchant is to realize that he is at once conducting commerce in the market of the world as well as in the market of the hereafter, suq al-akhirah, and transacting with both people, with people as well as with the creator of people. Indeed, the concept of amal salih, good work, is not limited in its practical expression to observing the private domain of personal devotions like the prayer or fasting, but has its ramifications too in the public domain of both formal and informal economic exchange. I mean, if one got that one sentence, it's good enough, really. That as a tafsir of Amalus Salihat. The concept is not limited in its practical expression to observing the private domain of personal devotions like the prayer or fasting or zakat or hajj, but has its ramifications too in the public domain of both formal and informal economic exchange. This book. In this book of the Ihya, Imam Ghazali elucidates the proper relationship or harmony between working for a living in the life of this world and working for salvation in the life of the afterlife. In this regard, he divides people into three groups. Those who pursue the life of this world, al-ma'ash, at the expense of their life to come, al-ma'al. And these are the people of perdition, al-halikun. The second group are those who devote themselves to worship for the sake of their afterlife, while foregoing their livelihoods in the life of this world. And these are the successful. Al-fa'izun. They forego their livelihood. The third group, those who are occupied with their livelihoods in the life of this world for the sake of their salvation in the life of the hereafter, and these are the people of the golden mean, al-muqtasidun. As is quite apparent in the book, Al-Ghazali is primarily concerned with espousing the proper conduct, adab, of the people of the golden mean in regard to the manner of their work, earning, and livelihood. The second one, the fa'izun, is not an easy path because it is very easy for people to give up their livelihoods, but that in itself can often lead to many blameworthy things, which is depending on people, other people, being careless about the source of your income, etc. So really the group we want to look at are the muqtasidun.
What was the description of the muqtasidun?
The muqtasidun. Those who are occupied with their livelihoods in the life of this world for the sake of their salvation in the life of the afterlife. And these are the people of the golden mean. The word muqtasidun is really important because it really means the people of iqtisad. And if you go to a modern dictionary, iqtisad is what? You know, it's economics. A modern Arabic dictionary will tell you this is economics. But the root of this word is cost. Cost is purpose. And it has a sense also of moderation. So the muqtasidun are people who have a purpose and they're moderate. They're moderate. The rank of the golden mean. I think this is a passage from Imam Ghazali. The rank of the golden mean, rutbat al-iqtisad, will not be attained so long as the proper procedure, manhaj as-sadad, so long as the proper procedure is not adhered to in the seeking one's livelihood, and the seeking of this world cannot be raised to a means and an expedient towards the hereafter, so long as the seeker fails to discipline himself with the discipline of the revealed law. And so here we expound on the proprieties of commercial dealings and the practice of the trades and crafts and the various kinds of earning and their norms. These are Imam Ghazali. Divides the book into 5 chapters, namely 1 on the merit, the fadl, the merit of an exhortation to earn your living. 2 on the science of valid business contracts, transactions and dealings. 3 on the meaning and practice of justice, adl in transactions. 4 on the meaning and practice of magnanimity or benevolence, ihsan, in business dealings. And 5 on the merchant showing sincere concern, shafqa, for his soul and his service to the life of the deen. One of the issues which I thought of for the preamble, it's well worth mentioning here. Under the auspices of Shaykh Abdassamad in Cape Town, where he currently resides, there has been established a college called the Dallas College, and it's for young men, for training them in leadership, really. young Muslim men. And there's a sister institution for women called the Lady Aisha College. And it has been said to Shaykh Qadr repeatedly, you really ought to have this matter studied there. This should be a formal academic subject there. And he said no. He said no. He said the people who are going to understand this and who can teach it will be the people who are practicing it. In other words, people who are actually in business. So it's an extremely demanding matter, theoretically, if you approach it in this kind of abstract way that we do in modern studies. But it becomes clear to somebody engaged in the market and in the world. So this is very much the focus of this presentation. It's an important note to have. In the first chapter, after presenting various verses of the Quran, prophetic hadiths, traditions of the companions, and anecdotes of the predecessors, exhorting people to work for their livelihoods, he goes on to discuss in some detail some of the special circumstances in which certain people can be excused from working and can rely on the public treasury for their support. This, of course, there was a public treasury which would have been halal for the Muslim to accept. The stories of the Salihun refusing the gifts of the Amir and money from the treasury are too numerous to mention. But that is what's called wara, scrupulousness. You should be absolutely careful of it, so nothing comes near you that's not halal. But there are very few public treasuries in the world today that you could happily accept money from. And this is what Imam Ghazali says in this. However, abandoning working is better for four types of people. The devotee, who is devoted to bodily devotion, al-ibadat al-badaniyah. A person observing some inner spiritual wayfaring and practices of the heart pertaining to the sciences of the spiritual states and unveilings. A scholar occupied with cultivating exoteric knowledge, ilm al-zahir, outward knowledge, in other words, of the Sharia, Tafsir, Hadith, Arabic language, from which people can derive benefit in their religious life, such as the jurisconsult, al-mufti, the exegete, al-mufassir, the scholar of the prophetic traditions, al-muhaddith, and others like them. Last, a person occupied with taking care of the well-being of Muslims, masalih al-muslimin, and responsible for affairs such as the ruler, the judge, and the court witness. There's actually, I was recently told something I didn't know, because it's very well known that Sayyidina Abu Bakr was appointed the Khalifa, that the next day he was on his way into the market with some clothing to sell. And Omar said, "Where are you going?" And he said, "Well, I have to look after my family." So it's very interesting because these men were having to make all the decisions for Islamic government. And Omar, first of all, what I've always known was that he didn't think it was appropriate that he should have to earn his living while looking after the concerns of the Muslims. But one of our lecturers, Ammar Firdaus from Mecca, told me another insight, which I've asked him to find the source for. Because he also said, look, you are going to be responsible for oversight of the market. How can you also trade in the market? How can there not be corruption in that? You're trading in the market and you're also overseeing it. You know, this is not possible. So another reason that the Sultan should take from the Baitul Mal. There's good reason for the Qadi to take from the Baitul Mal, because it is said that one of the duties of the Amir when he appoints a Qadi is that he has to make him ghani. Ghani doesn't mean rich, it means free of need. because otherwise he will be exposed to temptation in his judgments. When he's sitting between two people, he can be exposed to temptation. If he has no need of them, then the judgment is more likely to be safe. These people, if they are sufficed from out of the wealth allocated for the public interest or charitable endowments, al-waqf, established for the poor and the scholars, then their attention to what they are doing is better than occupation with earned a living. The al-waqf is a story in itself. We had a paper in our module in economics by Dr. Asfat from Australia, who's a fellow of this faculty. In fact, we had two papers from him. The one on the al-waqf was very striking. He said, which I had come across before, which another of our fellows, was Professor Mehmet Maqsoodlu, said, which is that the al-waqf in Osmanli culture amounted to as much as 2/3 of property. So 2/3 of property were given over to public good and public welfare. And I attended a lecture he gave Professor Maqsoodlu in Potsdam, and he said, you know, there were al-waqf for hospitals, there were al-waqf for hospitals for men, for hospitals for women, for hospitals for Jews, for hospitals for Christians. There were al-waqf, he said, there were even al-waqf for migratory storks that became exhausted in their migrations and had to land in Turkey. He said there were al-waqf, there was a waqf for hungry wolves in the hills of Anatolia. They fed them.
What does al-waqf stand for?
It means literally something that stands, you see, and we would call them endowments. And so it's a property, the ownership of which is returned to Allah Ta'ala, and which is then, there's a waqf deed, which is lodged with the Qadi, saying who's in charge of it, what's the purpose of it, what's it dedicated to, who is employed to administer it, what their salary is, etc., etc. So it's very fascinating. Really, one of the key moments in the history of the Azhar was when Gamal Abdel Nasser nationalized the al-waqf. Because the thing about the al-waqf was they were not under the state, they were not under the ruler. So they gave the imam and the scholar independence. They were registered with the Qadi, but they didn't belong to the ruler. So when Gamal Abdel Nasser instituted this thing, and most of the Muslim world followed, then they put the ulama, the imams, under the foot, really. Their neck was under the foot of the ruler. So you had tamed ulama. So this is part of the corruption that happened to our ulama class. Imam Ghazali concludes the first chapter by saying, these then are the virtues of earning a livelihood. It behoves that the contractual agreement, by which this earning is realized, fulfills four conditions: validity, sihha, justice, adl, magnanimity, ihsan, and concern for the deen. Imam Ghazali, these are the four things that have to go into contractual agreements. This, for example, the magnanimity, this new, I don't know how to describe it, words fail me, but my people who were not Muslims were known for this. If somebody sold something to another person, for example, they sold an old refrigerator or something, and they agreed that it was £30. And the deal, they were both contented with it. They passed over the £30. The one who sold the refrigerator for £30 would then give a £5 back. He said, for the blessing of it, for the blessing of it. See, this is something, this sense of magnanimity was universal in my lifetime. And it's been, this cancer of going for your own good at all costs is completely new in the human story. At the beginning of the second chapter, he writes that every person who engages in buying and selling and other forms of business dealings or working for a living is obliged to learn the science of earning in that class. It's obligatory. Yeah? Okay. So then, let's throw it open just for a couple of minutes. I know it's not a very generous space, but maybe one question that suffices all.
I think it's been mentioned twice about the importance of learning the fiqh and the rulings of transaction stuff. So where do we start with respect to that?
Where do we start? That's a very good question, and well, the authorship of Dr. Adam, his work of translation is admirable. Absolutely, that's a good place to start. And we had a conversation beforehand, and one of the things that my first encounter with this was as editor for the first translation of the Muwatta. And I just returned from Cairo, and people gave me this section from the Muwatta. They said, "Can you make any sense of this at all?" And so I worked through it, and some of them made sense and some didn't, but it was my first encounter with this because it's so far from our conceptual framework today that it's quite astonishing. But I still recommend the Muwatta as not for you to learn this material, but for you to get a glimpse of what this meant to the Salaf.
Which Imam's Muwatta?
Imam Malik.
Imam Malik.
Yeah. So it's there is a riwayah from Imam Muhammad, which I was also co-translator of. And Imam Muhammad is a very unusual riwayah because he excluded a lot of Imam Malik's material, took all his hadith, and then included a lot of his own material. So in the 19 or so riwayat of the Muwatta, it's absolutely unusual. And it's treasured in some ways because of this unusual nature, but it's not really representative fully of the Muwatta of Imam Malik. But the Muwatta of Imam Malik, for me, is a hologram. It's not a Maliki book, you see. That's not what it is. It wasn't Imam Malik's intention. It's a record of Medina, of the city of Medina, of the first three generations. And for me, it's like a really vivid picture. And Imam Malik is the first of the Sahih scholars in relating Sahih Hadith. And the ulama of Hadith, not the Maliki, the ulama of Hadith, one of the scholars said, the Hadith of Imam Malik, the prophetic Hadith of Imam Malik, are like looking directly at the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Medina, seated among his companions. That's the effect of it. They're just vivid. But you place that then in the context of Medina, the first three generations. Even the isnads of the Muwatta are fascinating because it's to do with grandfathers and grandchildren and all sorts of the people themselves are fascinating. So for the ethos, and because we need to root things in the Salaf, basically, and in the Sunnah of the Rasul. But you can get more scientific treatments of it. But for that, the Muwatta is unparalleled.
So how can it be that no recent scholars have done any work on this to make it available and accessible to the masses today?
The scholar is a human being. When the al-Waqf were basically done away with, then he basically had the opportunity of either being a government imam, mufti or whatever, with all the perils that entails. And there are people who've done that with great honour, actually. And so this is not to slander them. Or another area for people who know this thing has been the Islamic bank. You see? So there is in fact a huge literature, but I am very uncomfortable with that literature. I'm very uncomfortable with it because it is there for endorsing the Islamic banking and Islamic finance industry, and I'm really uncomfortable with that. I'm extremely uncomfortable with that. So this perspective, there's few people who have really tackled it. I do have to say that Sheikh Omar Badil has done a lot. You see, Sheikh Omar again went to the Muwatta, and these things that are very challenging for the intellect, he worked on them. He went to a lot of core works, and he's talked to a lot of ulama. So he's a good guy, and a lot of his works are, a lot of the key books he's done are not published in physical form, but they're available on the internet. He has quite an extensive one called a Fatwa on Banking, which has got a lot of material. But also, a couple of years ago, he remarried in Pakistan with a very eminent Muslim woman who is herself an activist and has been a member of the Punjabi Parliament. And he prepared a document for the government of Pakistan outlining all this material. If you can get hold of that, that's a pretty interesting document. Because he's got his foot in economics and in the traditional teaching of this material.
Would it be perhaps possible to get a reading list and perhaps a study plan as to what order we should approach the different texts that you?
All right, I'll try and put that all down, and where some things are available freely on the internet, I'll give you a link, and I'll give you a list of these books of Dr. Radi's, all utterly classical ones. But as I said, you see, our task is order, location, and the time. When Abu Bakr really said this thing about time, in Surah Al-Asr, it became really vivid to me every time I recite it. You know, Asr, it's either the late afternoon, the Salat al-Asr itself, or it's the epoch. And this is an ordinary Arabic usage. Al-Asr, Arabs use it today, to indicate the age in which you live. But every time I recite Surah Al-Asr, I hear this, saying, what Asri, the swearing an oath by the age. So this is our job, is to bring these three things together. Allah, aid you, Allah. Thank you for your attentiveness. Resuming with you all some other